And we are live. Okay, hello everybody. We are today in our graduate power event, and we have two invitees. And today we will talk about the masters in forensic psychology counseling. Is that correct? Yeah, forensic. So I want to invite, we have here our professor and director of the master, and we have our alumni, Hazel, who have came back just to talk with us and tell us, what she was doing all this time after she graduated. So before that, I would like to give a real introduction and explain what Dr. Raghavan have been doing. Dr. Raghavan obtained her doctoral in clinical and community psychology at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And he did a postdoctoral work training at Yale University. She conducts research on coercive control in intimidate, partner abuse, sexual assault, and sex trafficking context. That's a very difficult topic. It's very difficult. Thank you, Dr. Raghavan, for doing this. She's an active researcher, practicing psychologists and deemed an expert by the courts. Her work has created a case law in New York. Welcome, Dr. Raghavan. I'm so excited to talk to you about all your large experience and how you are moving this experience in your doctoral and your being as a director of this program. So Hazel Imbert is an owner of Coalition Solutions, works with survivors of gender-based violence and their families as a counselor in residential services at Sanctuary for Families. That's also a very difficult job. Oh my God, that's I mean, you guys really working with very touchy work. Being a graduate student of John Jay helped Hazel create connections, establish a strong professional identity, and engage in a career that she's passionate about. So I want to begin with Dr. Raghavan. Could you please tell us about you and how you become the director of this program and your passion and what you're transmitting in this program?
Okay, so I've been at John Jay for a long time. I've been at John Jay since 2002, and I came to John Jay after doing a lot of research with domestic violence, and I realized that almost everyone that works on the field with survivors are in fact graduates of terminal master's programs like this one, like forensic mental health counseling, and that made me passionate to bring more specialization in victim services, as well as traditional forensic work to FMHC, the program that I direct. So at various points at John Jay, I've worked, I've taught master's classes, created master's classes, and this year I took over as director. But I come to it with a lot of excitement because of the work I've done as a psychologist with different social service agencies, primarily in New York City.
Yeah, especially in that topic of sex trafficking. I mean, that's a very hot topic and difficult to talk. So Hazel, tell us about what are you doing right now, because you are in the same situation, gender, talking with people.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me. So as of now, I'm working at Sanctuary for Families, like you mentioned, and I work as an individual counselor. So I'm assigned families, but I work with the head of households. So I'm actually working with survivors of gender-based violence that are in emergency domestic violence shelter. So my work is a little bit more short-term, but I do a bunch of everything. But to kind of sum it up, since we have limited time, I do primarily individual counseling and group counseling.
And all of these skills are learned in the master. The master includes the counseling, and you were telling me, Dr. Raghavan, regarding that they actually can work individually. Tell us a little more about that. Can work like
the sound was a little unclear. So I think you said, how do we train? How did Hazel get this training? And I want to say this master's program is really unique. It lets you do two things. It lets you learn traditional counseling skills that are part of many different master's programs. It also has a strong forensic component. And by this, students are exposed to and learn about psychology and the law, or counseling and the law. And so students like Hazel learn how to do assessment, how to do screenings, how to work with both perpetrators of violence and aggression, criminal behavior, but also victims. And so there were classes on how to do counseling, how to do crisis counseling, how to do short-term counseling, how to do long-term counseling. And so, it's a unique program. Because it lets you mix counseling with forensics.
So, Hazel, in this program, you remember courses or activities that you were able to apply to your current job? Will you go back to your, how long ago you graduated?
Sorry, the sound was a little bit off. Did you say how long ago did I graduate?
Yes, how long ago did you graduate?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2017. So this was, I think, maybe right before the specialization that Dr. Raghavan talked about, which I would have loved to do and like claim it as like, I did this. But my interest was actually more on working with people that have, been caused harm in some way. So I actually tended towards those classes. So in terms of the courses that I took that were helpful, I mean, obviously all of them were, but a lot of what I do now that I would say was helpful, one class that I took with Dr. Raghavan was one on trauma. So that one is especially helpful because basically everybody that I work with has endured some sort of traumatic event or traumatic events. And so I had a much better understanding and a way to kind of frame the context of these people's lives so that I could understand how to better work with them and how to better serve them. Other classes that I took in terms of group counseling, it was helpful to get a class that helped me understand how do I work with people, not just one-on-one, but when you're working with an entire dynamic. It's very different being, with somebody one-on-one and kind of managing how you're interacting versus having a whole group of people. And making sure that you kind of stay on task. And it also depends what the purpose of the group is. So it feels a little bit different. So Dr. Raghavan mentioned a lot of the classes that I gained skills from to use, now in my job. I will say this, one of the things that was most helpful in terms of building connections was doing research. And I always joke around about it because I told Dr. Raghavan at one point, I was like, I know I'm here, but I don't like research. And instead of kicking me out, Dr. Raghavan was like, okay, well, let's find something different for you so that you can try it. So I actually started off as a forensic psychology student. But then I started doing interviews with people that were trafficked. And I liked that much more than I did research. So I ended up switching my program. So being able to be part of a research lab was helpful because I was able to interact with, other students that had different interests, and I was able to participate and still get experience, even though I didn't like, statistics and stuff like that. It's important, but it's not for me. So, it was nice to be able to interact and learn about all parts of doing research. And also too, to be able to work with somebody that has more experience than me. So Dr. Raghavan was able to kind of guide me in terms of saying, okay, maybe you can't do this, or maybe you don't like this, but maybe you can do that. So it was helpful in terms of, trying to figure out, because I didn't know what I liked. I just know I didn't want to do stats. And I guess one final thing I would want to mention is that I was part of the forensic counseling student group. And that was really helpful in terms of understanding, how to navigate the licensing process and all of that, because it is very confusing, very long-winded. So I think it is worth it, but I also very much appreciate being able to figure it out with other students and, have the support of other peers. So I know that was a pretty long answer, but
that's excellent. I know, praise networking, and being able to participate in activities that we do in John Jay is very important. It really, that's the way you connect with the world. And we were talking with Dr. Raghavan regarding how the master ends. What is the combination of the master? Some people do research, some but in master it was more practical. Could you please tell us more about how the master ends?
Was that to me?
Yes.
Morote, sorry. So we offer a wide range of exciting classes. And as I said, we have classes on criminal assessment, sex offenders, perpetrators of violence, as well as victimization. And as you start to get more advanced, you have to participate in what we call externship. And this is where you see clients. So if you want to work, for example, as many of our students do, with perpetrators or incarcerated men or sex offenders, you would work with our career advisor, Ms. Naomi Neistat, to find an externship that fits those interests. If you're more like Hazel and you want to work with survivors or victims, then you would similarly try to find an externship where you work with survivors. Some want to work with teenagers, others with adults, some more with women, some with gay and trans folks. So, you know, it's a little bit depending on what's there, but it's also what your interests are. So you look for an externship. And New York, of course, there's hospitals, there's prisons, there's parole boards, there's substance abuse shelters, there's jails. What have I forgotten, Hazel? There's a wide range of service providers.
Not everything, I think.
Okay, wide range of service providers, and you would spend 600 hours seeing clients, where you would, and it's a very exciting moment for students when they see their first client, when they're, it's theory, you role play, but then for the first time you're in a room with your own client and you're becoming a counselor. And so part of the training is towards the end, you will pick an externship that suits you, your time, maybe where you live, and you will do an externship. Now, I want to say, most of our students are from New York State, but we're getting more and more students from New Jersey and Connecticut. So that's also been exciting and fun, working with students from different states. And of course, we have students move from, I think the furthest I've had is Hawaii, but quite often from the West Coast and New Mexico. And some of those folks choose to do their externship in New York for the experience before returning, and others, particularly from warmer climates, return to their states to do their externships there.
So, first of all, are you actually hearing me now? Because I changed to microphone. Yes. Yeah, okay, so that's good, because I'm getting nervous. I say, okay. So you were talking about externships, and few people know what really is. And I know Hazel, she did one. So Hazel, can you tell us a little more about, for people who don't know what the externship is, how it works, how was your experience?
Yeah, so like Dr. Raghavan said, it's 600 hours, which freaking flies by, but it's basically what you would do in an academic year. So it kind of pans out to doing like 3 days a week at a placement. And so the whole purpose of it, like Dr. Raghavan said, is to start getting experience and start actually putting the clinical skills that you learned about into play. So to tell you a little bit more about the externship I did. So for some people, and even I used to be confused because people were like, what the heck is an externship? And I did my externship with a lot of social workers. So everybody called it internship. But it's the same thing. It's just a place where you get the experience so you can practice the skills that you got at school. So I did my externship at Sanctuary for Families, and that's how I eventually ended up working there. I was working with children and adolescents, but the program was for children and adolescents, now it's for families. But a lot of my clients were, younger kids. So I would do a bunch of different things. I would do individual sessions with one of my supervisors. I changed around a couple of times for different reasons, but one of the supervisors that I had, we did a parent support group together, and I had to develop the curriculum and stuff, and then she would check it to make sure that it kind of fit with what our goal was for the group. I did crisis intervention where it came up. So let's say if there was some sort of situation, a lot of times with the kids that I was with, there weren't kids that wanted to harm themselves or anything, but there might be a situation with a parent where there was maybe suspected maltreatment. So that was a situation that we had to kind of figure out if it was imminent. Trying to think of what else. I also had to do So we had like a child care room. And so there, the hope was that you could be kind of intentional with the care that you were giving the kids so that their parent can focus on getting whatever services was that they needed. So a lot of different stuff that I did. I actually ended up doing, this is something that social workers do, but doing process recordings, which was interesting. I think one of the good things about doing mental health counseling is that you can kind of be in spaces where other people are, but still getting the education that you're getting and being very specific about like the counseling skills that you're getting and applying it in different places. So I thought that was actually pretty cool. So I worked with kids and teens that were in shelter, teens and kids that already were in permanent housing. So I just kind of changed up. I think one of the good things with externship is that I was able to, as I got comfortable doing counseling, they added on more opportunities for us. And by us, I mean the other interns that were there. They gave us more opportunities to kind of engage with psychoeducational material and kind of help to also do things with the program in terms of like program improvement. And so that is one thing that I think was valuable, is that I got to do the direct stuff, but also other stuff that was still going to be part of the job that might not necessarily have to do with counseling, but would come up in some way.
So I was just thinking in the terms of being a psychology, having these masters, which includes also counseling, and you working with a diverse population in Manhattan, correct? Do you have people with several languages? And I know you're bilingual. You speak Spanish as well. Hola, español.
Hola, para que sepan que lo hablo. Yeah.
Para que sepa que lo habla. Muy
Yeah,
bien.
yeah. So I actually ended up, and that's one of the good things, is that I was able to, you know, as they were kind of screening / interviewing students, they did kind of ask us about maybe what other skills we had that we could bring to the table. So thankfully, I was able to bring you know, language skills into it, yes, so that I was better able to work with other clients. So I don't know if I should start speaking Spanish now. I was going to, but then I stopped myself.
you will speak Spanish one more, but I wanted to connect that with something specific credential that we have for people who speak Spanish. In the case, Hazel is actually, she born here because Spanish is from the parents. There is a specific certification. Could you please, Dr. Raghavan, explain about that certification for bilingual?
Sure. So this, outside of our department, it's not in psychology, but they're offered by the foreign language department. There is a Spanish translation certification to be for students who want to work in criminal justice systems. And so this is a very specific certificate that you can get in addition to your master's in forensic mental health counseling if you want to work with clients or in the court system or jail or parole. So you learn the terminology and the technical language of criminal justice systems in Spanish and English. I think that's really quite exciting.
Y ya, muy bien. Entonces, Hazel, están mandando preguntas. They're asking questions here in Facebook.
Okay,
One of the questions. Dale, adelante. Yeah, one of the questions, una de las preguntas es que solamente es para hombres este programa, solo para mujeres, si hay posibilidades para hombres. So, Dr. Raghavan, they're curious about, they feel like this program is more female oriented, but I would assume that it's for everybody. So,
Not at all. I mean, you know, I could see why you would think that, because the three of us are women right now. That just happens today. But there's, you know, it's not based on gender. There are a lot of things that we do that, the way I think about it is, it's a program for people who are passionate about understanding human behavior. And we're all passionate about human behavior, but in different ways and for different things. So I have students, for example, who would rather work with offenders. They would rather try to understand why do people do certain things that are violent? Why do people do certain things that are harmful to others? And of course, while men and women can be violent, it turns out in the US, it's really more men who are violent. And in some cases, both men and women prefer to work with offenders. Sometimes, men and women prefer to work with victims. I have students who work with both offenders and victims. And we know that offending and victimization is very closely intertwined. So I would encourage, all the men, gay, straight, and trans to apply. We welcome, in fact, it would be wonderful to get a strong queer population. One of the things we do in this program is really address social justice and folks who haven't, groups that haven't previously been considered in forensic studies. So men are super welcome. And we'd love to see lots of men apply who are passionate about counseling and psychology and forensics.
So not only men, but also all kinds. So let's talk about also the Hispanic population. Hazel is from families from the República Dominicana, correct?
Correcto.
So ahora quiero, Hazel, por favor, que le digas a todos los que están escuchando que vengan al programa porque tenemos muchísimo la población hispana que necesita ayuda. Diles un mensaje para todos nuestros amigos de español que hablan los hispanos.
Pues yo podría decirle que es un beneficio, yo diría, poder hablar el español porque se abren muchas oportunidades para las personas que hablan el inglés igual al español. Entonces, una cosa que sí puedo decir, o sea, verificado por el trabajo, es que yo trabajo con muchas personas diferentes y como dice Dr. Raghavan, pueden ser mujeres, pueden ser hombres, pueden ser personas que se identifican como lesbiana, gay, transgénero, muchas personas diferentes, pero yo creo que lo importante es saber que las personas hispanas, no importa con qué grupo se identifican, se lo va a encontrar donde quiera. O sea, no es solamente en una parte de la ciudad o consiguiendo un tipo de servicio. Yo creo que hay tanta diversidad en la comunidad hispana que para las personas que en verdad le interesa ayudar a las personas, especialmente con la consejería, que se considera eso con la salud mental, las personas lo consideran tabú. Y hasta en la familia mía eso es algo. Al que sea que dice necesita terapia, ese loco. Claro, en dominicano, tal vez dicen eso diferente en otras culturas, pero dicen, esa persona es loca, esa persona necesita ayuda porque algo malo le pasa. Pero la realidad es que no es el caso. Y Dr. Raghavan mencionó que muchas veces las personas que se consideran como criminales y personas que se consideran víctimas, a veces eso como que se enreda, que no siempre son dos cosas totalmente separadas. Entonces, si en verdad queremos ayudar a nuestra comunidad, si queremos que las personas se mejoren o que estén más conscientes de ciertos patrones o para mejorarse a sí mismo, pues para todos yo digo que es una buena idea.
Thank you very much. You made me proud, Hazel, because as a mother that I came from other country, and I really work hard for my daughters to speak Spanish. So when I see you, I see my daughter. So you also made me proud as a person because I always push it. I say, yeah. So I have another question here from Facebook. They say, does working in the field get overwhelming?
So I'll answer it quickly and then Hazel can, I try to build into all the classes for us to start from the very beginning to stand with both feet on the ground and be grounded and understand that when we become counselors, we have to be very strong and that we just don't become strong like that. It takes effort and investment. And so, the classes build in vicarious trauma. The classes ask us to reflect on our own strength. And something that I do with actually the student groups is we try to do different, at this point online, but soon, once we have the vaccine in person, meetings, where one of the most fun meetings we do is meet and mingle. Students come together right now online with their own drinks. And we form networks so students can support each other in times of pain. We also do talks on trauma, on self-care. So we try to embed it both casually as part of, activities, but also into the classes. And maybe, Hazel has more to say since she's only recently become a licensed therapist.
Yeah, wow, that was beautifully said. I'm like, yes, this is amazing. So in my experience, I think my trajectory has been exactly how Dr. Raghavan said. I had to build up to it. I think initially, because I work with a lot of people that have experienced trauma, um, it can be kind of overwhelming at the beginning because you're just like, wow, there's all this pain. And if it gets far enough to kind of impacting your perspective, if you focus too much on the pain, then your perspective on the world kind of shifts. So you have to balance that out and say, okay, I recognize that there's pain, but also is it possible to see that there is resilience in this pain? Is it possible to see that there could be joy while this pain is also kind of there too and while people are vulnerable? So I would say working in shelter has really taught me how to balance that. And I have not been perfect, I will say that. And I think one thing that really surprised me as, as a new professional is that I didn't realize that, my own lived experiences would come into play. So, it's very interesting to kind of have that self-awareness, to take care of yourself on the daily, and also trying to figure out your own baggage, your own stuff. A lot of times we talk about leave your stuff at the door when you're going into a counseling session. So I think that one of the best things that you can do as you're a student is to work on that, to practice that. And, I'm very thankful because that's something that was kind of ingrained into my externship experience, is making sure that I was doing things in a balanced way, making sure that I was debriefing after like a crisis situation, because people have different ways of dealing with their own pain, but also with witnessing others' pain. And so I wasn't so accustomed to witnessing others' pain. So you get used to kind of like finding what it is that works for you and doing that.
Hazel, we are very proud of your knowledge and your experience. And you really, really make us very proud. So now for the last words, Dr. Raghavan, I will ask you to give us some words for people who are watching us and they're thinking about coming to the masters. What skills do they need, or what they have to do to just enter to the masters?
Okay, so we require that you have, if you don't have an undergraduate in psychology, that you've at least taken enough courses that you can follow the material. So, if you go quickly to our website, you need to have done, and I'm sorry, but you need to have done statistics, you need to have done experimental psychology and research methods, because we believe while the human touch is very important, you have to be able to understand the science behind counseling. But I promise you it'll be worth it. And but we take people from all sorts of majors. We also generally require, we require a definite 3.0, so B average, and we get a range of folks. And then beyond that, we ask you for a personal statement and those sorts of things. So that would be the first step towards applying. And I encourage you to go to the website and look at that. I want to quickly say something I forgot to say. Another reason that makes this particular kinds of master's program, master's in counseling, so attractive, I think, is that you can be licensed. And what that means is you can start your own private practice. You can be a therapist. You can set up your own advertisement on Psychology Today. You can have your own office. You can sort of like the therapist in Soprano. So you can be your own therapist, or you can, if you want, work at a social service organization, or like many of our students, they do both. They work for, say, a hospital or a clinic or a prison, but they're slowly starting to have their own clients in the evenings or the weekends. So, but back to the actual question Dean Morote asked, go to our website. It's an easy application. We try to make it easy.
Great. So you say, check our website, you have the information there. And now, Hazel, the last words for students who are actually now in our program, ready to go to the world, what you will advise them?
Wow, such a big question. Well, first things first, congratulations. I don't know if there's, a lot of students that are working and going to school at the same time, and I had to experience that grind whew, it really makes you question yourself. So even if you're just doing the master's program, congratulations for getting this far. If you're working and going to school and you made it this far, congratulations. I think that one of the biggest things, especially because you're going through your master's program, and then there's still a little bit more before you actually get licensed, I think is just to be kind to yourself and also stay focused on what your goal is. I think something for me that I did not anticipate is just like the trajectory, how long it would take to actually get to the end goal. So I graduated in 2017 with my degree, but I actually got licensed. Yeah, I actually got licensed in November of 2019. I don't know. Time is kind of time doesn't exist for me anymore. I was recently. So yes, I think it was last year basically I got licensed. And so there were times where I got discouraged. There were times where I was like, was this even worth it? And as a person that's made it to the other side, the answer is yes, it is definitely worth it. And one thing that I did want to put out there is, especially for people, kind of going on that note that Dr. Raghavan was mentioning earlier about marginalized communities. I grew up not having a lot of money. I'm born and raised in the Bronx. I'm still in the Bronx. I was raised by a single parent. I'm first generation, so my parents were immigrants. For anybody that is the kid of immigrants, it's possible that your parents, were working more on surviving than saving up for, the dream of college and all that stuff. So, there were a lot of, for me at least, I did not see a lot of people that looked like me or that grew up like me, or identified like me doing these kinds of things. So it was kind of hard to see, like, what does the end goal look like? But I think as long as you are focused on what your end goal is, and as long as you use everything that you have learned thus far, even skills that you don't think would apply to counseling, I think that it can take you very far. And I think if you have the right program set up, which I think for a fact FMHC had like a really solid program set up, and that was just in my time years ago. It sounds like it's just continually improving. So if you have the right program, I see it. So if you have the right program set up, if you have the right people supporting you, and seeing your potential, and if you have the mindset for it, you can totally do it.
Thank you very much. And with this, we concluded. They were texting me that I didn't introduce myself. Hey, I am I always forget. I am Dean Morote from Dean of the Graduate Studies of John Jay College of Criminal Justice. So thank you very much. Good night, and very proud of our professors, director, as wonderful. Our student Hazel, we are just double proud because you are Hispanic, double proud because you speak another language, double proud because you are successful. So tell your mother that she did a good job. I said so. Okay, good night. Thank you very much. Say bye to everybody.